You're quoted as saying in talking to Real America's Voice that whereas January 6th was just a riot at the Capitol, and if you think what our Declaration of Independence says, it says to overthrow tyrants. So do you think that the assault on the Capitol was a legitimate exercise of popular insurrection?
Oh, Mr. Raskins, I know it's early in the morning, but this is the Rules Committee. This isn't your Trump derangement committee that you call the January 6th committee.
My last name doesn't have an S on it, Ms. Greene.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Raskin.
Okay, you've been talking about the Second Amendment. You came here to talk to us about the Second Amendment, right?
I'm here to talk about due process rights and protecting Americans' due process rights.
All right, so I just want to be clear. You've been quoted at least as saying that the January 6th riot at the Capitol was in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which says you can overthrow tyrants. You've also testified that people have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to go. So it seems to me that lots of people were armed on that day, but the logic of your argument is that everybody could have been armed and brought their weapons with them. And I'll take that as a conclusion.
What evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed that day? Mr. Raskin, do you have that to introduce into the record?
Just wait for it, but when it comes out, presumably you'll be supporting it, right? That they would have a right to have guns and knives with them, is that right?
Mr. Raskin.
Is that your position?
No, Mr. Raskin.
Well, no, I'm going to ask the questions here because this is the Rules Committee. You're not a member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Greene. Are you? Are you a member of the Rules Committee?
I'm a witness here at the Rules Committee.
Okay, so let me just ask you a question.
That is talking about due process rights, not your lies about January 6th, about President Trump and others.
Okay, I never mentioned him. You've brought him up. All right, I think your position has become clear. You think the Declaration of Independence says overthrow tyrants, that endows the people.
That's
That's a quote from you.
No, you're twisting words in an article.
Well, tell us what is your position.
I'm used to that.
I just ask whether we not talk over each other because our court reporter, the stenographer here is having a difficult time.
Mr. Scott, let me just ask you, and then we can close this, because I think I've gotten everything I need to get, but what's your position on it? Do you think the people have a constitutional right or a right under the Declaration of Independence to attack the government with any kind of weapon?
No, and let me clarify. You asked me my opinion on the Second Amendment. Obviously, my opinion is not consistent with recent Supreme Court decisions. The majority of the court is disagreed, and we got to go with what the Supreme Court. We have to respect the court, and they are working out what the individual right is. And they have said in the Heller decision that there are limitations. Yesterday, they indicated that the limitation that New York had was too much, so we're still trying to figure out what the individual right is. As I indicated, I think a plain reading of the Second Amendment is inconsistent with those decisions, but the decisions are what they are. And, you know, our system is the Supreme Court is the law of the land.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, the Constitution gives Congress the right to regulate, arm, fund, organize, discipline the militias. 50 states have banned private militias. There is no right for people to take up arms against the government, and I think we need to put down this insurrectionist interpretation of the Second Amendment that's out there. Justice Scalia has made it very clear that the Second Amendment permits reasonable regulations in the interest of public safety and public security, and this legislation advances, however modestly, that goal of making us all safer.
The Biden administration, I believe, is staffed by radicals. The State Department has consistently alienated our friends and appeased our enemies. You're empowered as the State Department's first standalone Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Your mandate is to promote a concept on the left called equity, which I think is nothing more than brazen discrimination. You were appointed in April 2021, and as you extensively testified this morning, you introduced fundamental changes to the State Department hiring practices in line with the mandate of equity to affirmatively and aggressively discriminate. A year after your appointment, in April 2022, the State Department released its, quote, equity action plan to integrate these so-called equity principles into, quote, all aspects of State Department foreign affairs. That very week, just days after you published the equity action plan, and 1 year after you began your tenure, a senior State Department official broadly distributed what I consider to be a very troubling email. I have a copy of that email next to me. Let me read from a part of the email. The email says that hiring practices have developed inside the State Department so that, and I'll quote, that certain candidates could not be hired because they have a disability. They are white men. They are straight white men. They are not of the, quote, right religion. All of these are verbatim quotes from the email of a senior State Department official. My first question to you is, did you clear this guidance?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I've never seen that before.
You've never seen the email before?
I've never seen it.
So you didn't know it had been sent?
This is the first time I'm seeing it, sir.
Well, do you know that it is happening? That the State Department perceives, and this is, I believe, as a result of your work, that they have a mandate to discriminate against, as the email says, to discriminate against people with disabilities, to discriminate against white men, to discriminate against straight white men, and to discriminate against people that are not of the, quote, right religion. I'm not sure what that meant, but I suspect it meant that if someone is a Christian. I don't know that because that's not what the email says. Are you aware these practices are happening at the State Department?
Again, thank you for the question. I am definite and certain that they are not happening at the State Department. But again...
So do you believe the senior State Department official who sent this email was lying?
Senator, I can't comment on, I don't know who that's from. I don't know if it's, I've never seen it before, so.
So you're the Chief Diversity Officer, and you're arguing you are certain discrimination is not happening at the State Department. Is that right? Was that what you're testifying? That's what you just said.
I am saying that it is against the law, and we certainly are not overtly or on purpose breaking the law in the Department of State. Certainly, there are members of our organization who do discriminate, who do harass, who do bully, which is why we are trying to put in place programs to address it and to strengthen accountability for those who do indeed break the law.
So you didn't clear this guidance, and after it was sent, you're testifying now that you remained unaware of it, so no one showed it to you. You're in the State Department for a year. You were empowered in your position in an unprecedented way. In your testimony, you talked about creating a DEIA data working group about hiring practices and a dedicated DEIA core precept. And your testimony is you didn't know that this discrimination was happening. My staff can transmit to you the exact header and the details of this email.
Okay.
But I have to say, Ambassador, I find it a little bit amazing that this discrimination is being reported to be ongoing in the administration and you are professing to be unaware of it. You know, I'm reminded from a line from the movie Office Space. What would you say you do around here? What is your job if not to stop discrimination? And unfortunately, I believe what your job in practice is encouraging this discrimination. This is a manifestation. You just said a minute ago in testimony, your hiring and promotion in the State Department will depend on complying with the edicts from your office. Is it good for the State Department and good for the United States government to be actively discriminating based on disability, based on race, based on being straight white man, or based on not being the right religion? Is that good or bad?
Senator, as I'm looking at the email, it does appear to me, and my eyesight is not great, that people have reported comments. That's certain candidates?
So what it says is, unfortunately, over the past several months, a number of people have reported comments that certain candidates could not be hired because. So these are employees at the State Department saying, we can't hire someone because, and here's what the email lists, they have a disability, they're white men, they're straight white men, or they're not of the right religion.
Indeed. And so I would say comments does not at all say it is indeed happening.
Comments from hiring people saying we can't hire them because of it.
Time of the senator has well expired.
Those brave men and women risk their lives every day to protect the American citizens from the consequences of illegal border crossings. Together we bear witness to the worst border crisis in the U.S. history. There has been more than 4 million illegal border crossings since Joe Biden has taken office. That's not the worst part. Now that Title 42 may end, we're bracing for a tsunami. People talk about 18,000 crossings in a day. That would mean 13 million more illegal crossings for the rest of the term of Joe Biden, if nothing changes. Think about that. 17 million more illegal entries into our country. Just last week, Secretary Mayorkas testified under oath that yes, the border is secure. I'm here to tell you it is not. We spent the day with border agents. I asked each and every one if this border is secure. They laughed. They said it is not. It is one of the worst points in the history of this nation. We just went to a bridge in El Paso where 70,000 people have come across in the last 7 weeks. And the Secretary of Homeland thinks this border is secure. For the last 2 years, President Joe Biden and the Democrats running Congress has pushed open border policies and waged baseless attacks on our border agents. The actions of this administration have empowered criminals, human traffickers, and terrorist organizations all around the world. Just last week, U.S. Customs and Border agents off the coast of Puerto Rico came under fire in the line of duty. One agent was while 2 other agents were wounded. In March 2021, we came down after the new administration had lifted those policies. We visited the border. I warned, having learned from the Border Patrol agents, of the suspects on the watch list that were coming across. The amount of fentanyl that they hadn't seen in the past now coming across. We held a press conference. We advised not just America, but to the members of Congress. Members of the Democratic Congress said I was lying, that there weren't people on the watch list. Congressman Gallegos said that, who sits on armed services. Since that time period, more than 107 suspects have been apprehended crossing this border. And Americans in every single community. Americans have for Secretary Mayorkas would like you to believe that the people committing these crimes are just in the search of a better life. How many people have not been caught. In 42 days, a united Republican House takes control. In 42 days, we end one-party Democrat rule in Washington. A new House, Republicans will work to stop Joe Biden's assault on our laws, our borders, and our border agents. We will use the power of the purse and the power of the subpoena. Now, let me be clear. Those responsible for this disaster will be held accountable. I've spoken today, again, to Congressman Jim Jordan and Jamie Comer, the future chair of Oversight and Judiciary Committee. And they have my complete support to investigate the collapse of our border and the shutdown of ICE enforcement nationwide. Under Secretary Mayorkas, his deliberate suspensions of our laws have proved deadly. Is now flowing in record amounts. Today, 300 Americans will be poisoned. Tomorrow, 300 more. It is the equivalent of an airline crashing each and every day in America. But again, he does nothing. If an airline crashed 3 days in a row, the entire nation would say, we have a real challenge. We have a crisis. We have a disaster. We have to do something about it. But he continues to lie to the American public. We have lost operational control of our southern border, empowering jails and human traffickers. They have fired shots at our National Guard. They put AKs pointing at helicopters. They have and the women and caught them on fire. And again, Secretary Mayorkas thinks the border is secure. He has blocked ICE and Border Patrol from enforcing our laws while vilifying them at the same time. Do you realize what that has done? In the last 10 days, 3 Border Patrol agents have committed a total of 14 this year, a number we have not seen in decades. He ended the Remain in Mexico policy and wants to end Title 42. His actions have produced the greatest wave of immigration in recorded history. Our country may never recover from Secretary Mayorkas' dereliction of duty. This is why today I am calling on the Secretary to resign. He cannot and must not remain in that position. If Secretary Mayorkas does not resign, House Republicans will investigate every order, every action, and every failure will determine whether we can begin impeachment inquiry. If Secretary Mayorkas was in charge of any company, he would have been fired by now for the failures of what he has caused. The American public deserve more, deserve better, and expect more within their government. Enough is enough. We will do whatever it takes. This is my commitment to the men and women of the Border Patrol and to the citizens of the United States of America. With that, I'd like to introduce Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who represents this area, represents more than 40% of the entire border, and was recently re-elected by more than 14%. But what he has done is brought more members down to the border to educate them. And after January 3rd, no longer will members have to come down to the border to tour. We will hold our hearings at the border so the Democrats can no longer hide from the crisis they have created. I bring you Tony Gonzalez.
Thank you, future Speaker McCarthy. You know, I've hosted 16 delegations at the border. I've hosted Kevin McCarthy 3 times. And what you see is change is coming. And change is going to be led by the people standing right here. It's Thanksgiving week. People are doing a lot of different things. And what are House Republicans doing? We're going to the epicenter of the border crisis, and we're highlighting 2 things. One, highlighting the men and women in Greene that are rolling up their sleeves and fighting every day for this country to keep it safe. Two, we're highlighting the failures of this administration. On Thanksgiving week, we have to be thankful for a lot of things. You know, Kevin McCarthy mentioned this 14. This is historic. It's no longer migrants that are dying at the border, it's Americans. And those Americans are wearing green uniforms. Rocky Seriano, here in El Paso, recently committed suicide. This is an epidemic. This should get us all united. You know, tomorrow is going to be the 6-month anniversary of Uvalde. And what people don't realize is Uvalde went into lockdown. The schools in Uvalde went into lockdown 48 times before that school occurred. 48 times. Guess what? I see that same occurrence happening all over the district. Change is coming. That day, a week later, I hosted the President of the United States. And I pulled him aside and I said, Mr. President, now isn't the time, but I would like to visit with you in the White House to see how Republicans and Democrats can work together to secure this border. My staff has called the White House every week since then. I urge the Biden administration, please work with the House Republican leadership to secure this border because lives are on the line. You know, these 16 border trips, they've been to talk about security. You know what we're not talking about, which I wish we would? Commerce and trade. Guess what? There's so much more that El Paso has to offer the world. Reshoring, you know, taking stuff from that's happening in China, reshoring it to the United States and our partners in Mexico. We don't have those discussions. Why? Because our border is wide open and people are dying every single day. These are the discussions I wish we would have in Congress. But it starts somewhere. Change is coming. That change is now. That change does not happen without those that are willing to roll up their sleeves and fight for it.